This particular item kind of started early in January of this year, and under the State Model Toxics Control Act, MOCTA, the Department of Ecology mandated that the city move forward with closing the Street Landfill. And we were identified as the potential liable party, the PLP, for this particular effort, and we began meeting with DOE at that time in January, and that kind of has carried forward. We've identified the requirements necessary to kind of move forward with this closure, and according with the Monster Control Act. In June, we started establishing the process a little bit more. We brought on the consulting firm of Aspect Consulting. I have Carla Brock here with me today to answer any technical questions that may come up. This is the first landfill closure I've done, but we are moving forward. We've moved talking with DOE. We've negotiated a draft now of the agreed order, which is in your packet for review. We've run that through our city attorney. It's a pretty boilerplate document. Pretty much just identifies kind of a schedule of how we would move forward through this process. And actually, I'm going to have Carla hand out. There was a flyer that will actually be included in a public meeting that will be held next month with Department of Ecology here at Shelton. And as this moves forward, we will establish that date. But the first thing that has to happen is we, the city, need to approve the draft agreed order, and then that will then trigger them to set up this meeting date. There'll be a couple of different public notices that will be done, so the public will be aware of the public meeting, so they can come and testify and share in their concerns. But this one-page handout, I don't know if anybody wants to hold their hand up, we'll pass you out a copy of this. It kind of more than anything just has some definitions of what we mean by remedial investigation and feasibility study. But the main four things I wanted to talk about tonight is that under this agreed order, we're agreeing to do a technical memorandum identifying the chemicals of concern and the screening levels that we need to look for. And then the next piece of it will be we'll develop this remedial action investigation plan that is to kind of identify the extent and the type of pollution on the site. And that will be done through a boring of holes, a collection of samples, and identify what we find there and to what extent and to what levels. We then will do a feasibility study, and that will evaluate different cleanup options that the city and the Department of Ecology will want to consider in how we close the landfill. And then we will also define this cleanup action plan that really kind of describes the different type of cleanup efforts that we could do. And then in the long term, we'll actually select what options make the most sense, and we'll move into a phase beyond this agreed order phase. We'll go into another kind of cleanup action effort. But this particular agreed order is just to get through this remedial investigation and feasibility study and identify what we have out there on site and what is, how big is the landfill, and do we have contaminants that are migrating off-site? All these types of things will be evaluated, groundwater levels. This particular process takes about somewhere between 18 months and 2 years to get through it. A lot of it sometimes has to go for multiple seasons to determine groundwater levels based on the winter and the summer. And so anyway, this particular effort this is the trigger to get it going. The city is committed by signing this to complete the work, and yet we still retain the right to seek cost recovery or contributions against third parties should those be found through the science of certain contaminants on site, and we can track those back to other parties. We can bring those in at a later time as another PLP to this effort. The Department of Ecology has been gracious enough to give us a grant in the amount of $215,000, which we would need to match with a contribution of 25% local match, which would come out of our solid waste utility to fund this agreed order kind of remedial investigation feasibility effort. That won't be available until the order is actually signed. So again, the process is we get this through, get the commissioners to sign this draft agreed order. We then next month will have a public meeting on the effort, take public comment. That will then be looked at by DOE, and if there's a major change, then we come back to the commission. Otherwise, it would move forward with Department of Ecology signing the agreed order, and it's at that point that we can start getting the grant moving forward for reimbursement. And let's see. So, you know, it's our recommendation that this be, brought forward on the consent agenda next week on October 22nd to authorize the mayor to sign the agreed order and to authorize the city administrator to do any necessary budget modifications. And with that, if you have questions in technical nature, Carla, I think could help. She's gone through several of these closures with Aspect and is I think a great consulting firm. We're very lucky to have them, I think, to carry us forward in this effort, and we want to do it justice. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Well, first I would just like to welcome Carla to our beautiful city. And I was one of the supporters of this. We have problems from the past, and we dealt with it to a degree. Nothing was ever hidden from the public about the Street Landfill. We had worked with the Department of Ecology. I've seen over all the years, touched many times, but it's time to get it past us, and this is a step in the right direction. When I voted for it the first time, we have a little more money than we have now, but one thing I do like is the 25% city match rather than the 90% city match. So I feel it's something we have to do, and so welcome, and I have no problem signing this.
Yeah, this is a promise we made as we went through the planned unit development with Paul's that came up at that time, and we all supported it very vigorously. And I think that it sends a signal to the county residents and potential investors and developers, along with the EPA brownfield grant that we're accepting. I think if we're going to do any, we do it all. And I think that one is just as important as this, and I'm proud to have signed my name to it. And I think we need to move forward with anything we need to do to clean up these sites for potential investment. So I support it as well. No technical questions.
So, Carla, did you have anything you want to share with us? You love our city? You love our little city, right? That's the stuff we want to hear.
I love your city.
Okay.
No, I think Greg hit all the points. It's, being proactive about something like the Street Landfill is a fantastic step for everyone. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I believe that this commission has enough information to honor staff's request to place this on the consent agenda for October 26, 2015, authorizing the mayor to sign and the city administrator to make the necessary budget modifications.